The year is 2147, and humanity's relentless pursuit of knowledge has finally pushed the boundaries of exploration into the deepest corners of the cosmos. On board the Kronos expedition vessel Ether Dash, Professor Emily Carter stood at the observation deck, her emerald eyes fixed on the swirling anomaly ahead. The ship's navigation systems had been recalibrated countless times since they first detected the strange temporal distortions emanating from this region of space. It was as though the fabric of time itself had been torn open, revealing something both mesmerizing and profoundly unsettling. David Ortega, the ship's seasoned pilot, leaned against the control panel, his fingers drumming unconsciously against the metallic surface. "Professor," he began, his voice tinged with both curiosity and unease. "The instruments are still reading negative entropy levels. Whatever we're about to encounter, it doesn't play by the rules." Emily nodded, her expression a mix of excitement and trepidation. She had spent years preparing for this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality that awaited them. As the ether descended through the planet's atmosphere, the crew witnessed a sight that defied all logic. Rivers flowed uphill, their waters cascading backward into mountainous reservoirs. Trees seemed to shrink into the ground, their branches folding inward until only bare patches of earth remained. The very air shimmered with an otherworldly glow, as if light itself were being rewound. Emily's heart raced as she recorded her initial observations, her mind struggling to comprehend the implications of what she was seeing. This wasn't just a scientific anomaly, it was a fundamental rewriting of the laws of physics. The planet, later designated as Taramis, was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Every movement, every action seemed to unfold in reverse. A single step forward sent ripples through the environment, causing particles to rearrange themselves in ways that defied causality. Emily's boots left imprints on the ground, only for the soil to erase them moments later, as though time itself were erasing their presence. David's voice crackled through her helmet comms. "Professor, you need to see this." He pointed to a cluster of crystalline trees that were ungrowing before their eyes. Their branches retracted into trunks that sank back into the ground. Her heart raced as she realized they were witnessing the fundamental reversal of creation itself. This story is just beginning, but trust me, it's about to get much more intense. Stay tuned to witness what happens when science meets the impossible. Emily's mind raced as she analyzed the data streaming into her holographic interface. The readings were unlike anything she had ever seen: negative time flow, decreasing entropy, and particles moving in reverse trajectories. Each discovery raised more questions than answers. What kind of force could reverse the arrow of time? Was this phenomenon natural, or had intelligent beings engineered it? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden alert from the ship's AI system. "Warning: temporal instability detected. Recommend immediate retreat to safe distance." David's instincts kicked in immediately. "Professor, we need to pull back. If this thing gets worse, we might not be able to leave." But Emily hesitated. The data they were collecting was unprecedented, and retreating now would mean losing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to understand the mechanics of reverse time. "Give me 5 more minutes," she insisted, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We've come too far to turn back now." As they continued their exploration, the anomalies became more pronounced. A flock of bird-like creatures soared overhead, their movements playing out in reverse. Feathers reattached themselves to their bodies, wounds healing as they flew backward into their nests. Emily watched in awe, her scientific curiosity outweighing her fear. But then something unexpected happened. A sudden surge of energy rippled through the air, causing their equipment to malfunction. Instruments displayed erratic readings, and the holographic displays flickered uncontrollably. David grabbed Emily's arm. "We need to go. Now." Reluctantly, Emily agreed, and they made their way back to the shuttle. As they boarded, David noticed something strange. Their footprints were vanishing behind them, as if the planet were erasing their presence entirely. "Do you think it knows we're here?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mind was racing with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Were they merely observers, or had their arrival somehow disrupted the delicate balance of this reversed world? Back inside the shuttle, they reviewed the footage from their helmets' cameras. To their astonishment, the recordings showed events unfolding in reverse. Footage of their descent played backward, their words spoken in reverse phonemes. It was as though the planet itself was resisting their intrusion, attempting to rewrite their presence out of existence. "We only started to scratch the surface," Emily murmured, her voice filled with determination. "But I have a feeling we're about to uncover something far greater and far more dangerous." Inside the shuttle, Emily and David began analyzing the samples they had collected during their brief excursion. The crystalline formations they had observed earlier proved to be particularly intriguing. Under microscopic examination, the crystals exhibited a unique molecular structure that seemed to defy conventional chemistry. Instead of forming stable bonds, the molecules appeared to oscillate between states of existence, collapsing and reforming in rapid succession. "It's like they're caught in a loop," David remarked, peering over Emily's shoulder. "But why?" Emily's brow furrowed as she adjusted the settings on the quantum spectrometer. "I think these crystals are somehow tied to the temporal inversion we're observing. They might be acting as conduits or perhaps even generators for the reverse time flow." Her hypothesis was supported by the fact that the crystals emitted faint pulses of energy, each one accompanied by a subtle distortion in the surrounding space. It was as though they were resonating with the very fabric of time itself. Their investigation took a dramatic turn when one of the larger crystal samples began to exhibit strange behavior. Instead of remaining static, it started to grow backward. Its edges softened, its facets smoothed, until it eventually dissolved into a fine powder. The process was accompanied by a low-frequency hum that resonated throughout the shuttle, causing the lights to flicker and the instruments to display erratic readings. "What's happening?" David asked, his voice tinged with alarm. "I don't know," Emily admitted, her hands trembling as she recorded the phenomenon. "But whatever it is, it's affecting everything around us." She quickly sealed the sample in a containment unit, but the damage had already been done. The shuttle systems began to degrade, their functionality unraveling in a manner eerily similar to the crystal's dissolution. Panels blinked off and on, and the AI's voice stuttered as it attempted to maintain control. "Temporal instability increasing," it warned. "Recommend immediate evacuation." Despite the chaos, Emily refused to abandon her research. She knew that understanding the crystals was key to unlocking the mysteries of Teramiz. But as the situation grew increasingly dire, David intervened. "Professor, we can't stay here. If this keeps up, we won't just lose the shuttle, we'll lose ourselves." His words struck a chord, forcing Emily to confront the gravity of their predicament. Reluctantly, she secured her notes and prepared to evacuate, but not before taking one last look at the crystals. There was something hauntingly beautiful about them, as though they held secrets that transcended human comprehension. As they ventured deeper into Teramiz, Emily and David began to notice signs of intelligent life, or rather, the absence of it. Structures that seemed to be unbuilding themselves dotted the landscape, their intricate designs suggesting deliberate craftsmanship. Towers collapsed inward, their materials folding back into raw elements. Roads unraveled, leaving behind pristine stretches of untouched terrain. It was as though the planet's creators had erased their own existence, leaving behind only echoes of their civilization. Emily's mind raced with possibilities. Could these structures have been built by beings who mastered the art of reversing time? Or were they victims of the same phenomenon that now governed the planet? She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, though there was no visible evidence of life. The air felt heavy, charged with an energy that seemed almost sentient. "Do you feel that?" David asked, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. It's like the planet's alive, and it knows we're here. Their exploration led them to a massive crystalline formation that pulsed with an inner light. Upon closer inspection, they discovered patterns etched into its surface, symbols that seemed to shift and change depending on the angle of observation. These aren't random designs, Emily said, her voice filled with wonder. They're a language. Someone or something left a message here. Using her portable scanner, she began decoding the symbols, piecing together fragments of meaning. The process was slow and painstaking, but the results were astonishing. The message spoke of a civilization that had harnessed the power of reverse time, only to lose control of it. As they delved deeper into the translation, the environment around them grew increasingly unstable. The ground trembled, and the air shimmered with distorted waves of light. David's instincts screamed at him to leave, but Emily was transfixed. "This changes everything," she whispered, her eyes wide with realization. "If we can understand how they did it, we might be able to replicate it, and maybe even reverse the process." But before she could finish her thought, a sudden surge of energy knocked them off their feet, and the crystalline formation began to collapse inward. "We need to go," David shouted, pulling her away just as the structure vanished into thin air. Back at the temporary base, the team worked feverishly to analyze the data they had gathered. Every second brought new challenges, as the reverse time flow continued to wreak havoc on their equipment. Instruments displayed readings that contradicted known physics, and the AI struggled to process information that literally unraveled before completion. Emily's hands trembled as she recorded her observations, knowing that each note might vanish at any moment. Outside, the triple sunset played in reverse, darkness bleeding into light across the alien sky. David's piloting instincts kicked in when their shuttle systems began to degrade, not mechanically but temporally. The ship's AI spoke in reverse phonemes, its processing power unraveling. They found themselves racing against a countdown that moved backward, each tick bringing them closer to something. The airlock seals fluctuated between states of existence, threatening to erase their only way home with each passing paradox. Emily's realization hit her like a thunderclap. Their very presence was accelerating the temporal decay. Every action created ripples of anti-causality, threatening to collapse the local time-space continuum. She watched in horror as her research notes disappeared mid-sentence, the ink retreating back into her pen. David's helmet cam recorded, "Emily's realization hit her like a thunderclap. Their very presence was accelerating the temporal decay. Every action created ripples of anti-causality, threatening to collapse the local time-space continuum." She watched in horror as her research notes disappeared mid-sentence, the ink retreating back into her pen. David's helmet cam recorded fragments of their journey that dissolved into static before his eyes. It wasn't just their equipment failing. It was reality itself unraveling around them. The implications were staggering. If their actions were causing this destabilization, then every step they took, every breath they exhaled, could be contributing to the planet's accelerated temporal reversal. Emily's mind raced as she tried to calculate the potential fallout. "David," she said, her voice trembling but urgent, "we need to minimize our impact. Every movement we make is like dropping a stone into a pond, except the ripples are rewriting existence itself." David nodded grimly, his hands gripping the edge of the control panel. "Then we shut down everything non-essential. Lights, scanners, even life support if we have to. We can't risk making this worse." Together, they powered down the shuttle's systems, leaving only the bare minimum operational. The hum of machinery faded, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to press against their eardrums. Outside, the crystalline structures pulsed faintly, as though responding to their efforts or mocking them. But the respite was short-lived. As the shuttle's systems went dark, the environment outside began to shift violently. Rivers that had been flowing backward suddenly reversed again, now moving forward at an alarming speed. The ground beneath them quaked, and the air shimmered with distorted waves of energy. Emily clutched her data pad, her knuckles white. "It's not enough," she whispered. "We're still affecting it. Whatever's happening here, it's beyond our control." David's instincts screamed at him to act, but he froze, unsure of what to do next. They were trapped in a paradoxical nightmare, where every solution seemed to create new problems. The planet wasn't just resisting their presence, it was actively fighting back. "We're running out of time," David muttered, glancing at the countdown timer on the shuttle's console. Except it wasn't counting down anymore. It was counting up, ticking backward towards zero. "Whatever happens next, we need to be ready." The countdown reached zero, and for a moment everything stopped. The quaking ground fell silent, the shimmering air stilled, and even the pulsing crystals ceased their rhythmic glow. Emily and David exchanged a glance, their faces pale with apprehension. Then, without warning, the world around them erupted into chaos. The sky fractured, revealing swirling vortexes of reversed light and shadow. The ground split open, exposing veins of glowing crystal that pulsed with increasing intensity. It was as though the planet itself was unraveling at the seams. Emily scrambled to her feet, clutching her data pad. "This isn't just localized instability," she shouted over the growing roar of energy. "The entire planet is collapsing into a temporal singularity." Her words sent a chill down David's spine. A temporal singularity, a point where time ceases to exist altogether, was a theoretical concept, something physicists had debated but never observed. Yet here they were, standing on the brink of one. David grabbed Emily's arm. "We need to get out of here. Now." But Emily hesitated, her scientific curiosity warring with her survival instinct. "If we leave now, we'll lose everything we've discovered. This could be humanity's only chance to understand reverse time." Her voice cracked with desperation. David's grip tightened. "And if we stay, we'll lose everything, including ourselves. There's no point in understanding this place if we don't survive to share it." Reluctantly, Emily allowed herself to be pulled toward the shuttle. But as they reached the hatch, they were confronted with a horrifying sight. The shuttle itself was beginning to dissolve, its metallic surface peeling away like layers of an onion. The airlock seals flickered in and out of existence, and the interior lights dimmed as though the ship were being erased from reality. "No," Emily whispered, her voice breaking. "Not the shuttle. Not now." David's mind raced. "There has to be another way. If we can't leave the traditional way, maybe we can use the planet's own mechanics against it." He pointed to the pulsing crystals nearby. "Those things are tied to the temporal flow. If we can harness their energy, maybe we can create a stable exit point." Emily's eyes widened. It was a risky plan, but it was their only hope. With no time to waste, Emily and David sprinted toward the largest cluster of crystals they could find. The ground beneath their feet shifted unpredictably, forcing them to leap over fissures that opened and closed like hungry mouths. The air grew heavier, pressing against their suits with an almost physical weight. Emily's heart pounded as she scanned the crystals, searching for a way to interface with their energy. "These crystals aren't just conduits," she said, her voice strained but focused. "They're nodes in a larger network. If we can synchronize them, we might be able to stabilize a small pocket of normal time, just enough to escape." David nodded, his hands steady as he worked to set up a portable energy converter. "I'll handle the hardware," he said. "You focus on the calculations." Working in tandem, they connected the converter to the crystals, carefully aligning its frequency with the pulses of energy emanating from the formations. The process was painstaking, requiring absolute precision. One wrong move could destabilize the entire system, plunging them deeper into the temporal abyss. Emily's fingers flew across her data pad, adjusting settings and recalibrating parameters. Sweat dripped down her brow, fogging the inside of her helmet. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, The crystals began to resonate in unison. A low hum filled the air, growing louder and more intense with each passing second. The ground stabilized, and the swirling vortexes in the sky began to recede. "It's working!" Emily exclaimed, her voice filled with triumph. But just as quickly as the relief came, it was replaced by dread. The crystal's energy was building to critical levels, and the converter was struggling to contain it. David's eyes darted to the readouts. "We're pushing the system too far. If we don't release the energy soon, it's going to overload." Emily's mind raced. "We can't release it here. It'll destroy everything within a 100-mile radius. We need to redirect it somewhere safe." Her gaze landed on the shuttle's remains. "Use the shuttle as a conduit. Channel the energy into its core and eject it into space." David didn't hesitate. He rerouted the energy flow, directing it toward the remnants of the shuttle. The once pristine vessel now resembled a skeletal husk, its surfaces corroded and crumbling. As the energy surged through the system, the shuttle began to glow with an otherworldly light. Emily and David backed away, shielding their eyes from the blinding radiance. "This is it," David said, his voice tight with emotion. "Once we eject the core, there's no turning back." Emily nodded, her throat too dry to speak. She knew what they were sacrificing, not just the shuttle, but their only means of returning home. Without it, they would be stranded on Taramis, at the mercy of its unpredictable temporal mechanics. With a final adjustment, David activated the ejection sequence. The shuttle's core detached with a deafening roar, shooting skyward like a comet. For a moment, it seemed as though the plan had worked. The energy dispersed harmlessly into space, and the planet's surface stabilized. But then, without warning, the core exploded in a burst of reversed light, creating a shockwave that rippled across the atmosphere. Emily and David were thrown to the ground, their suits absorbing the brunt of the impact. When they finally regained their footing, they were met with a surreal sight. The planet's landscape had transformed. The rivers flowed normally, the ground was solid, and the sky was a serene shade of violet. It was as though the temporal reversal had been reset, or perhaps rewritten entirely. As the dust settled, Emily and David stood in stunned silence. The planet around them was no longer the chaotic, time-reversed world they had encountered. Instead, it was eerily calm, almost peaceful. The crystalline structures remained, but they no longer pulsed with energy. They stood silent, like monuments to a forgotten age. Emily's data pad buzzed to life, displaying readings that defied explanation. The temporal flow was stable, perfectly balanced between forward and reverse. "It's like the planet found equilibrium," she murmured, her voice filled with awe. "But how?" David shook his head. "Maybe it wasn't us who fixed it. Maybe the planet did it itself." As they explored the transformed landscape, they discovered something that sent chills down their spines. Etched into the largest crystalline structure was a single symbol, a perfect circle enclosed by a spiral. It was a message, clear and unmistakable. "This wasn't an accident," Emily said, her voice trembling. "Someone or something engineered this. They used us to restore balance." David's expression hardened. "Then we're not done yet. If this place is part of a larger experiment, we need to find out who's behind it, and why." Emily nodded, her determination renewed. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, they felt a glimmer of hope. They had survived the impossible, and in doing so, they had uncovered a mystery that could change the course of human history. The discovery of the spiral-enclosed circle symbol sent Emily and David on a frantic search for answers. They scoured the crystalline structures, their surfaces now smooth and inert, hoping to find more clues about the beings who had engineered this world. Each step they took felt heavier, as though the planet itself was watching, waiting to see what they would do next. Their breakthrough came when Emily noticed faint indentations on the base of one of the larger crystals. At first glance, they appeared to be natural imperfections, but upon closer inspection, she realized they formed a grid-like pattern. "David, look at this," she called, her voice tinged with excitement. Using her datapad, she scanned the markings, which began to glow faintly in response. The crystal hummed softly, then split open like a flower blooming in reverse, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a small, disc-shaped artifact that pulsed with a soft, golden light. Its surface was covered in intricate carvings, symbols similar to the ones they had seen earlier, but arranged in a way that suggested a narrative. "This isn't just a message," Emily said, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's a record, a history of this place." David stepped closer, his brow furrowed. "If it's a history, then why leave it here? Why not take it with them?" Emily didn't have an answer, but she knew one thing for certain. This artifact held the key to understanding Taramis. Carefully, she placed it on a portable scanning platform, activating its interface. The symbols began to rearrange themselves, projecting holographic images into the air. The images depicted a civilization far more advanced than humanity, one that had mastered the manipulation of time itself. But their mastery had come at a cost. The holograms showed scenes of prosperity followed by chaos, cities unraveling, people dissolving into streams of light, entire ecosystems collapsing into temporal voids. It was clear that the inhabitants of Taramis had pushed the boundaries of their technology too far, triggering a chain reaction they couldn't control. In a desperate bid to save their world, they had reversed time, hoping to undo the damage. But instead of restoring balance, they had trapped themselves in an endless cycle of creation and destruction. As the holographic projections continued, Emily and David were drawn deeper into the story of Taramis. The final images showed the civilization's leaders gathering in a massive chamber, their faces etched with despair. They stood around a central console, their hands hovering over controls that glowed with the same golden light as the artifact. The scene shifted, showing the planet's surface transforming into the time-reversed world Emily and David had first encountered. "They sacrificed themselves," Emily whispered, her voice heavy with emotion. "They erased their own existence to stabilize the planet." David nodded slowly, his expression grim. "And now we're standing where they left off. If we don't figure out how to break the cycle, we might end up the same way." The artifact emitted a low hum, drawing their attention back to the present. Emily noticed that the symbols on its surface were shifting, forming new patterns that seemed to respond to their presence. "It's alive," she murmured, her fingers tracing the edges of the disk. "Or at least it's aware of us." David stepped back instinctively, his hand resting on the hilt of his plasma rifle. "Aware doesn't mean friendly. We need to be careful." Emily ignored his caution, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. She activated the artifact's interface again, this time focusing on the shifting symbols. To her astonishment, the holograms began to change, showing not just the past, but potential futures. One projection depicted Taramis restored to its former glory, its inhabitants thriving once more. Another showed the planet consumed by a temporal singularity, erasing all traces of life. And a third was blank, as though the outcome was yet to be determined. "This is a choice," Emily said, her voice trembling with realization. "The artifact isn't just a record, it's a tool. It's giving us the power to decide Taramis's fate." David's jaw tightened. And if we make the wrong choice? The enormity of the decision weighed heavily on Emily and David. They were no longer mere observers. They were participants in the fate of an entire world. Every option came with risks, and the consequences of failure were unimaginable. Emily stared at the artifact, her mind racing through possibilities. "We can't restore the civilization," she said finally. "Their technology was too dangerous. If we bring them back, we risk repeating the same mistakes." David nodded reluctantly. "But we can't let the planet collapse into a singularity either. That would destroy everything, including us." Emily's gaze drifted to the blank projection, the one that represented an uncertain future. What if we choose neither? She asked. What if we reset the cycle but leave it incomplete? Give the planet a chance to heal without interference. The idea was risky, but it offered a glimmer of hope. By leaving the temporal mechanics in a state of equilibrium, they could prevent both destruction and restoration, allowing Taramis to evolve naturally. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was the best they could do under the circumstances. Let's do it, David said, his voice firm despite the uncertainty. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. With their decision made, Emily and David prepared to activate the artifact's reset sequence. The process was complex, requiring precise synchronization between the artifact and the planet's remaining crystalline nodes. Emily worked tirelessly, her hands moving with practiced precision as she input commands into the interface. David monitored the environment, his eyes scanning for any signs of instability. As the sequence progressed, the ground began to tremble, and the air shimmered with waves of energy. The artifact glowed brighter, its light pulsing in time with the planet's heartbeat. Emily's heart raced as she reached the final step. "This is it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Once I activate the reset, there's no turning back." David placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've got this, Professor. We've come too far to second-guess ourselves now." Emily took a deep breath and pressed the activation button. The artifact erupted in a burst of golden light, sending shockwaves rippling across the landscape. For a moment, everything froze, the air, the ground, even time itself. Then, slowly, the world began to change. The crystalline structures dissolved into the earth, their energy dispersing into the atmosphere. The rivers flowed normally, the sky cleared, and the planet's surface stabilized. It was as though Taramis had been given a fresh start, free from the burdens of its past. As the dust settled, Emily and David stood in silence, taking in the transformed landscape. The planet was no longer a time-reversed anomaly or a temporal singularity. It was simply a world, raw and untamed, ready to begin anew. Emily's data pad buzzed to life, displaying readings that confirmed the temporal flow was stable. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with awe. "We gave Taramis a second chance." David smiled, though his expression was tinged with sadness. "But what about us? Without the shuttle, we're stuck here." Emily nodded, her determination unwavering. "Then we'll make the most of it. We've been given a rare opportunity to witness the birth of a new world. Maybe that's our purpose here." As they set off to explore their new home, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Somewhere, somehow, the echoes of Taramis's past still lingered, watching and waiting. But for now they had peace and hope. What will Emily and David discover as they embark on their new journey? Will they uncover more secrets of Taramis? Or will the planet's past catch up to them? Subscribe now to continue exploring the mysteries of time, space, and the unknown.